Every career tells a story. Some are these great tales of steady success, but others are tragedies, defined by one single catastrophic moment. So today, we're going to dive into one of the most powerful leadership case studies in all of history, the story of a great general whose 30-year legacy was completely undone in just a single afternoon. Okay, to really feel the weight of this tragedy, we have to start at the absolute peak of his success. This wasn't just some random commander. This was Yu Jin. And this quote, it's from his own leader, the legendary warlord Cao Cao. This isn't just a compliment, it's the ultimate stamp of approval. In an age of total chaos, Yu Jin was the gold standard for discipline.
So, how in the world did he earn a reputation like that? Well, his career wasn't just handed to him, not at all. It was a slow, tough climb up a treacherous mountain, built on a foundation of pure grit and just undeniable performance. I mean, just look at this career path. It's the classic story of rising on pure merit. He starts at the bottom, an unknown foot soldier in this massive rebellion. But because of his raw competence and his ability to get results, he just moves up, step by step. He earns trust not by playing politics, but by winning on the battlefield, eventually standing as an equal among the greatest military minds of his generation. This is literally what building a career from the ground up looks like. So what was his secret sauce? Well, it really boiled down to these 4 things. Think of them as his core strengths. His discipline was absolutely legendary. He could turn a chaotic battlefield into a well-oiled machine. He never asked his troops to do something he wouldn't do himself, always leading from the front. He was a brilliant tactician, and maybe most importantly, he was fiercely loyal. This was his brand. And these pillars, these qualities, they're what propelled him to the absolute peak of his career. He had made it to the summit, a position of just immense power and incredible trust. 30 years. I mean, just let that number sink in for a second. This wasn't some flash in the pan. We're talking 3 decades of surviving brutal warfare, executing incredibly complex campaigns, and just delivering time and time again. He was the seasoned veteran, the guy who had seen it all. In today's business world, you'd call Yu Jin the ultimate fixer. When a crisis was blowing up, when a rival was threatening a key territory, when the whole situation was on a knife's edge, he was the one they sent in. He was the organization's most trusted high-stakes operator. And his track record? It completely speaks for itself. This wasn't just about being loyal, it was about consistent, undeniable performance. Victory after victory cemented his reputation as a leader who was both rock-solid reliable and absolutely terrifying to his enemies. He was at the top because he earned that spot, over and over again. But you know how it is. It's often at the very pinnacle of success that we face our greatest tests. And for Yu Jin, that test would become the single defining moment of his entire life. The stakes here could not have been higher. He was given command of 30,000 of the kingdom's absolute best soldiers. The mission? Relieve the besieged Fancheng castle, a fortress that was the linchpin of the entire war effort. This mission was supposed to be his crowning achievement. And just like that, all the strategy, all the experience, all the bravery, it suddenly became irrelevant. An uncontrollable force, something totally outside of his control, entered the game. Weeks of non-stop, torrential autumn rains began to fall, turning the rivers into raging monsters. What he was facing was what we'd call a classic black swan event. Right? This wasn't an enemy army he could outsmart. This was nature itself completely unleashed. A catastrophic flood swept through his camp, wiping out his armies, his supplies, and his entire strategic position in an instant. So now he and what's left of his men are stranded on a tiny patch of high ground, completely surrounded by the enemy's navy, which now controls all the floodwaters. So put yourself in his boots for a minute. What do? There's no hope of victory, no path for escape. Do you order your men to die in a pointless, bloody last stand for the sake of honor? Or do you surrender to save their lives? And this slide, it just lays out the 2 completely different answers to that impossible question. His second-in-command, a warrior named Peng De, chose what everyone saw as the honorable path. He fought to the bitter end, was captured, and then executed because he refused to surrender. But Yu Jin, the commander responsible for thousands of lives, he made a different calculation. He surrendered. He chose survival. But in the warrior culture of his time, where honor was literally valued more than life itself, that single choice came with a devastating price. And this is where the tragic final chapter of his life begins. and his fall from grace, man, it was as swift as it was brutal. First, he's captured, going from an elite general to a prisoner of his great rival, Guan Yu. Then he gets exiled, passed between kingdoms like a trophy. Finally, years later, he's sent home, not as a hero, but as a living symbol of a national embarrassment.
But the final blow, the thing that really broke him, it wasn't a sword, it was psychological. The new emperor had him go pay respects at his old mentor Cao Cao's tomb. But there on the wall was a brand new mural, a painting of the Battle of Fancheng. It showed Peng De dying bravely, and it showed Yu Jin on his knees begging for his life. The shame was just too much to bear. He fell ill and died right after. And this, reportedly, was his lament. In his own mind, his 30 years of service, of bravery, of loyalty, all of it was just gone, erased. He weighed his entire life's work against that single moment of crisis and decided he came up short. What's so devastating is that the final judgment didn't come from his enemies. It came from inside his own head. So this brings us to the most important question, right? What can we, as leaders today, actually learn from this heartbreaking story? How do we apply the lessons from his fall to our own careers? Well, let's think about his whole career like a leadership balance sheet. On the asset side, you got this mountain of value built over 30 years. Discipline, bravery, loyalty, tactical genius. But on the liabilities side, you have one catastrophic event. And what's so fascinating and frankly terrifying is how that single liability didn't just offset the assets, it completely wiped them out. It raises a really chilling question for any leader. How much are all your good decisions worth when you're faced with one disastrous outcome? For Yu Jin, the final accounting was written entirely in red ink. And this, right here, is the big, tough lesson from his story. It suggests that your career isn't judged by the average of your performance, but by the extremes, especially how you react in an unforeseen, career-defining crisis. Whether it's fair or not, your worst day can end up becoming the only day people remember. The pressure of leadership is that you're always just one crisis away from having your entire story rewritten. And so that leaves us with this really difficult, lingering question. Was Yu Jin a failure? Or was he a great leader who suffered a catastrophic failure? Was his final decision a pragmatic choice to save his men? Or was it an act of cowardice that erased everything he'd ever done? His story is so timeless because it forces us to really think about how we measure a career, how we define a legacy, and what it truly means to lead when you're faced with an absolutely impossible choice.